good wolf. But also, as I know, if it is nurtured well, if it is enabled and empowered well, a good wolf, the good mainstream, beautiful theology of Islam can also flourish, even in the worst situation and conditions.
Reverend Marshall, we've talked a lot about the Jewish and Muslim traditions, but here in this country and in Jerusalem, where there's a strong Christian tradition, how do you see your faith's role in all this?
We're in holy season right now as Christians, right smack dab in the midst of Lent. And I like to think that the Lenten season is a time of facing ourselves. And Christians have much to face about the way in which we have been triumphalistic, supersessionistic. That's a theological term that suggests that any new revelation surpasses what came before and abrogates what was already there. I think some Christians have said that about Judaism, and some Muslims, present company accepted, have said that about Christianity. And I think there's a grave need for us to see the kind of claims that we have made and the kind of claims that suggest that we hold all the truth and another tradition does not. I think Christians have been quite guilty of that over the years, a theological triumphalism that has interpreted the whole world through the framework of the sacred narrative that Christians hold. And hence some of the most contested sites within Jerusalem itself are where Christians are trying to outclaim even the other Christians. I want to tag along with what you were saying, Abdullah, in terms of this attempt for a Christian or a Muslim to say, when something awful happens, well, a real Christian wouldn't do such and such. And that's a part of the parlance right now, if you've been paying any attention to the debates. But it's important, I think, for all of us to say, we are capable of lots of things. We are divided selves within our own faith commitment. And so we must claim the darkness, if you please, that is a part of each of our traditions, particularly when we attempt to dominate the other or to make claims that go far beyond what being a good neighbor should mean.
And it's that expression, the other, that I know the Atlantic Institute has talked a lot about, seeing the other as you see yourself, embracing the humanity in those that see the world differently than you do. And that's the great challenge, of course. Rabbi Hartman, can you possibly share a story or an experience where that was personal for you? Or excuse me, Rabbi, yeah. I got your name wrong.
No, you were right.
Rabbi Hartman, sorry.
Yeah. As long as you don't call me Rabbi in Tepley, we're good. I remember one of the gifts of my work is that we have begun to invite to the Institute in Jerusalem a group of Muslim leaders in North America and Christian leaders to engage in a different conversation about Judaism and Israel. And just a couple of years ago, there was a group of, they're called MLIers, Muslim Leadership Initiative. We're in Jerusalem a little before, and then we met right after the war in Gaza. Uh-huh. And from an Israeli perspective, the war in Gaza was the most simple and just of wars. Just war theory, it was classic, it was simple. Someone's lobbing missiles and terrorizing 2/3 of my population. Of course I'm going to respond. And it was simple. From our perspective, it was our fundamental right to defend ourselves and to defend our children. And throughout the war, That was the experience we had. It was my son fought in that war. And it was clear. We experienced, here we were in the moral right. And then I met my Muslim students and friends. And because we had worked together, I knew that there was no moral space between us. My love, my respect, the values, we shared similar values. And they wanted to speak to me and say, Daniil, what's going on here? And I didn't even understand the question. I didn't even understand. What do you mean, what's going on here? You didn't see? It's the most simple thing. And then one of the things I discovered is that, and this is a very important part of encountering another, is that you think that your picture of the world is the only picture. And then you meet someone who's they're good people. More than that, they're your friends. And they're telling you, they're not the people, and this is unfortunately in Israel very often, I meet the other in the midst of battle. I was a tank commander. I meet the other in a moment in which each one is trying to kill each other. But here I met another who is now my friend, my soulmate, and to discover that they were seeing a completely different war. They weren't seeing the missiles flying. They were seeing my missiles landing. And I didn't see that. And so, and it's had a profound impact on my life. I still don't apologize for defending myself. I still don't apologize for winning a war. I refuse for Israelis to die in great numbers so that the world will have sympathy for us. I've done that in the past. Not interested in you loving dead Jews. Not going to play that role. I feel very proud of the fact that I can defend myself, and I have a right to do so. But now, when I exercise that right, I think over and over and over again, is there another side? Is it proportional? What's happening on the other side? How much do I have to work to prevent that war? How much do I have to work to bring it to an end? And it was through MLI that I was enlightened.
And I'm sure you have a moment like that as well. Yes?
Moments.
Yeah.
I will take it a little bit of theological and religious angle. Because if our dialogue efforts, getting to know one another, is only for problem-solving purposes, if it is only for trying to end wars and conflict, which in itself is wonderful, but I think we should aim even higher. We should aim in higher that in the 21st century, cross-religious, cross-faith conversations go beyond the problem-solving, that it could be a wonderful way of feeling the presence of God in our lives and glorifying God's name together in such a rich and profound way. It can pump the kind of spirituality on us that ending those conflicts and wars or solving those problems could be automatically much, much easier. You know, there's a famous, beautiful verse of Quran. God says, I created you from a man and woman, and I divided you into nations and tribes and religions. It's God talking. The end of the verse is very interesting. I made you all different. It was my decision as the creator of all, so that you will get to know one another, so that you will get to know each other. Back in the days when people were living in homogeneous societies, that was a fantasy. But today, that commandment of getting to know one another is not even an option anymore. That God is inviting us to be in a relationship with God in those rich cross-religious, cross-faith conversations. And it's possible today. No one can say, I love Chinese food, but I don't want Chinese neighbor. When I moved to North Carolina for the first time, my next door neighbor, he made sure everybody understood he comes from a very particular faith community. His door has a sign, Jesus is the God. His internet wireless is John 14:6. So clearly he comes from a particular community not known with their interfaith efforts and getting to know one another. The moment he realized a Muslim imam is moving to next door, literal next door, he couldn't even bring himself to come and say hello for about 3 hours. Because my wife and I, we look visibly Muslim, we are moving things, truck is on our driveway. And after 3 hours, he gathered his confidence, came and asked who we are. I will never forget. I will never forget. When I told him who we are, he said, oh my God, love your neighbor as yourself will never be the same. Love your neighbor as yourself will never be the same. And he changed. He changed, and we changed as a result of that relationship and friendship as well. I think there's a different way of, I love the Psalms 96 and 98. God says to the children of Israel, sing me some new songs. Sing me some new songs. I think it is a mandatory, obligatory call from Sinai, calling us in the 21st century as Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and of no faith or other faith traditions, singing different kind of songs by engaging with each other in a meaningful conversation.
Yeah, love thy neighbor as thyself. Easy to say, not so easy to do for so many people. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the interpretive key to how to read the Bible is how do we treat the other. I think that's suffused through the text. I'll tell a story of when the other was no longer an other for me. I have a Jewish friend in Chicago. She invited a Christian woman to Shabbat at their home for the dinner. And the Christian woman, had a splendid time and appreciated the hospitality, which is a very generous thing for a Jewish family to invite a Christian to enjoy that special meal. And they talked about other times of getting together and that it would be a wonderful friendship. My Jewish friend made other overtures to the woman, and she just went silent. Didn't return the calls, didn't reciprocate in hospitality. And so my Jewish friend asked me about that, knowing that I knew the Christian woman in Chicago. What happened? And it was of such wounding that the Jewish woman brought it up with me on 4 different occasions. And I realized she had had some expectations, and she had been wounded by a rather cavalier or non-response from the Christian woman. Well, I told my friend, I don't think this is anti-Semitic. I think this is a rude person. Because I know her, and she's been rude to me a lot. Inhospitable, makes promises she doesn't keep. And so it was very interesting. The Jewish woman and the Christian woman, this one, we are commiserating, and guess who has become the other? Yeah, the other Christian sister. But it was a sense of seeing something with different lenses and reframing what had actually gone on. And it was kind of funny for both my Jewish friend and me, and we realized that, yeah, this is really what the case is. But my Jewish friend, as a religious minority, had come to anticipate that she might be treated in a particular way. And it was good that we had a sustained conversation about it.
Well, it's so gratifying to see such a vibrant, diverse group here on this college campus, all wanting to engage in a civil way. And when you think of the campus as, in a way, a microcosm of our society, I'd like to get all of your thoughts on why you think in this country, especially, it's become so difficult for people on opposing sides of this issue to even talk to each other. And you see it on the campuses. Quite frequently, you've had students and professors making allegations of Islamophobia. You've had students and professors and other groups saying that they feel the climate on campuses has become anti-Semitic in recent years as well. especially with the growth of the BDS movement, as it's called, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And so when you bring it down to the level of the campus, there can be, I haven't seen it as much, maybe I'm wrong, on the UNF campus, but when you research this issue all over the country, there seems to be a lot of anger and fear and mistrust on the campuses. And if that's the canary in the coal mine for our whole society, how do we get to a place where these two groups that have competing narratives can try to even talk to each other? Because you tend to think of a college campus as a place where people should be able to talk to each other, but it's gotten to the point where that's become very difficult.
It's a great question. First, there is a phenomena in which people from 6,000 to 10,000 miles away are very comfortable with somebody else fighting to the last drop of blood for their ideology, of course. And there's something about that. From far away, yes, and then you're the protector of the pure idea, but you're not there. There's something when you're there, like right now, at this hour, my son, who's 28 years old, they know him well, is on reserve duty, and spending a month. Right now, his life is in danger. When that happens, you tend to look for what other perspectives. You're not so quick to say. The other thing that happens from distance, and I think it's also one of the great challenges of college campuses, and we're supposed to call you millennials. I'm going to call you youth. No one's, as a grandparent, I'm allowed. Is that the world is so black and white, so simple. There's truth. I have the truth. I have the truth. And here, like, the reason why we love each other, we're not just colleagues, we love each other, is that the essential feature of each one of our religious traditions is to make us aware, not that we have the truth, but the truth that we don't have. It's like that's what, for all of us, what living with God means. But very often, as you see, each side, they're so certain. They're so certain. And they're so certain who is the right one and who is the wrong one.
At the age of 17.
At the age of 17, 19 is where you have a PhD in certainty.
Yeah.
And I'm so certain, and not only that, to be a moral person is to commit yourself to fighting for that certainty, and to also, by the way, it's not just certainty, it's to become the judge. I am the judge. And to look at from the outside, there's real problems in the Middle East. I own the problems and the responsibility of my people. And I'm spending my life, truly my life, trying to educate my people, to commit to the values and ideals that will hopefully bring a new Middle East. We have problems. The Palestinians have problems. Jews and Muslims in particular, Christians are more spectators in this conflict right now, and sometimes victims. But it's about stopping to be the judge of others, stopping to perceive that the world has such simple, divided in falseness and truth, righteous and evil. And when you can take that step back, then you begin to recognize that there's room for a conversation that from 6,000 to 10,000 miles away, you don't engage in. And there is something perverse. There is something perverse almost about spectator politics.
Yeah.
Spectator, and you almost want, it's like you're sitting in a coliseum. You play, cheer. Real people are dying, real people are suffering. And I think it's very positive that the youth here care, because others are just doing something. I apologize, I didn't grow up in America, but there's some, whatever you do in your Alpha Phi Shmai, whatever it is, they're not exactly caring all the time, they're doing other things. That kids care is a beautiful thing, but with care has to come some doubts and some willingness to listen. And it's a tragedy, but the truth is it's not just on campus.
Yeah.
Not listening now to the other is becoming the paradigm of American discourse. And as an American who lives now away from America, that is not America. And that's not, I love America. That's not America. And it's no accident that our children on campuses might be mirroring the low level of discourse and mutual vilification that seems to be now taking hold of too much of America.
Yeah. Would you agree with that? People talking past each other?
Absolutely. I think your observation of recent deterioration and partisanship and polarization on college campuses. I've been a college Muslim chaplain for 15 years now, and I have never seen the kind of rapid deterioration and polarization of all kinds, of all political persuasions and ideologies. But I think this is only a manifestation and reflection of much bigger pathologies in the society. It is not unique. It is not a campus problem only. No one should be surprised to see somebody who's so unhealthy, because that unhealth is a result of decades-long bad diet, lack of exercise. You have to see if somebody is in such a poor shape in such a young age, you should see what you have been feeding yourself with, literally and figuratively. No one should look into this bad shape society where polarization, partisanship, essentialism, you are either with me or against me. We have been feeding the society for so long with that kind of dividing partisanship in our political language, in our civic language, in our religious language. No one should be surprised the current unimpressive picture. And using the same analogy, if you want to regain our health, if you want to create spaces for nuances, for gray areas where we can have meaningful conversations before we jump into and throw each other self-serving facts, we have to regain our health. I'm an educator, so I see everything through the lenses of education. If you educate people, quote unquote, with wrong stuff, with harmful stuff, if you plant the seeds of hate, stereotype, bias, what you will cultivate, quote unquote, what you will harvest is nothing but polarization, partisanship, people spending a lot more time trying to understand what's wrong with the other than explaining what is good about them and their point of view.
All right. And now it's time to bring in these wonderful young people who've been sitting here so patiently and bring you into the conversation. Do you guys all have mics, or yes? Okay. How can your generation, and by the way, I'm Generation X, and nobody ever talks about the needs of my generation, ever.
What generation am I?
I guess you would.
I'm 57. Do I have a generation?
Well, I guess you're technically a baby boomer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now I feel
You
good.
you guys got a lot of attention too. We don't get any.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But since the millennial generation is so large and so influential, how do you see your generation having an influence in this conversation?
Well, I think the first thing is to be a part of the conversation. I really appreciate all of your analysis of sort of what's happening on campus, and I think a lot of that is because growing up, I was not taught to have a dialogue. I was taught how to debate, right, in class. You stand up next to somebody in elementary school and you debate, and you're not actually taught how to have a conversation and sit down with someone different from yourself. And so I think that the more we can do that and the more we're invited to the table to have those conversations, the more confidence I think our generation will have in being the leaders of solving a lot of these issues.
Do you feel that's happening on this campus now? Do you see that happening here?
Yeah, definitely. For those who don't know, oh, sorry, mic's off. Can you guys hear me?
No.
No. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. For those who don't know me, I work at Interfaith Center for almost 3 years now. And it has changed my life, because once I was taught that I was better than everyone else because I have it figured out as a Muslim, and I don't. And I have put myself out there to meet other people. I had never heard of a secular humanist, ever, and I met Charles. And it is through these events that I not only learn about him, but learn about myself and what is my responsibility as a Muslim to encourage these dialogues, to have a say of what is going on, and not just put to the side because I'm younger or I don't have enough education on that topic, because I think it comes more of from experience and personal experiences.
Charles?
Do you mind repeating the question just so I'm precise on my answer?
Sure. How do you see your generation hopefully doing a better job than the people that have come before you? Because as we've all noted, the two sides are intractably at odds. And as the rabbi noted, it's easy for all of us thousands of miles away to, pontificate and give our opinions, but your generation is a very large and vocal one. What are your thoughts?
I think that it is important that we remain vocal. I think that in this time and age, we're talking about the climate on university campuses, and I think that it's becoming increasingly more important that we protect our individual rights to discuss. As a secular individual, I do not have a faith background. I am not drawn to this issue by my spiritual belief. I'm drawn to it because of a personal investment in the United States of America and the world and all of my fellow humans who inhabit it. And my opinion isn't an individual one. And I think that realistically, everybody who is even a part of these faith groups, whether they're Muslim, they're Jewish, they're Christian, they're Hindu, Buddhist, they are all of an individual disposition about this issue. So I think it's important that on university campuses we protect the right to really speak on an individual level. I think that my generation is increasingly becoming guilty of basically convicting people of social thought crimes. If they do not believe what I'm subject to believe, then they're not a part of my community. And that's not how I operate. And I think my secular ideology assists me in that, but my plan is to continue to advocate for a space for people to speak.
Social thought crimes, huh? What do you think about that?
I don't even know what that means, so I'm going to talk later. But yeah, I think that something for our generation is to educate ourselves not just on the issue, but our own background, to understand fully what we claim to believe, what we claim to be a community of. And from that place of understanding of who I am, be able to better reach out to other people and, understanding on a deeper level, if I claim Christianity and Jesus is called the Prince of Peace, like that's an amazing place to start to bridge it to other people. And so I think there's a really deep need to make it our own and not just listen to the voice that was before us, but the other voices around us. And that's why it's such an incredible opportunity to sit and listen to people of different faiths. And I really applaud the other students that are here today to educate themselves and hear other opinions, because I think what we're talking about, just that intractability of just listening to the voice that was behind us, and not making it our own and just only shouting that one voice. So I think it's really important to know ourselves on a deep level.
What do you want to hear from leadership, faith leadership, secular leadership, that you haven't heard yet?
I mean, what I most want to hear are questions. I want them to ask me what I think, how I think the situation in the Middle East, what's happening here in our country, how does it impact me? Because I'm the person who's going to inhabit this earth, in a generation, and my children, and that's what I'm thinking about. And so I want to be asked. I don't want to be told.
Okay, interesting. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think adding to that, what I want to see is how I can be part of their community. I do have a community here locally, but I think one of the key moments where I learned a lot is when I walked into a Hindu temple or when I walked into churches. But I simply did those for class grade. But now I want to go and do it just because it is my responsibility as a Muslim and as an individual. I want them to tell me of ways that I can be part of the community and for me to decide upon that. Because this is an issue where we are all involved in. It is not my problem or his problem. This is our problem.
I would like to hear religious and secular leadership propose viable solutions. And I think that that is happening across the board, but oftentimes that these solutions go unheard or they're dismissed. I think that as long as we continue to put forth ideas, we foster the dialogue
What
that
are the
leads to.
viable solutions that you think have been dismissed?
So I think that traditionally when we look at the Israel-Palestine conflict, there are generally two solutions. There's the two-state solution and the single-state solution. President Obama has endorsed the two-state solution in which Palestine and Israel maintain statehood separately. This has its own problems because the Gaza Strip is separate from the general state of Palestine. And the single-state solution suggests that we dissolve that the world have some influence in dissolving a Jewish state of Israel and include Palestine in that, which I'm not suggesting is without fault itself. But I think that we've seen interesting ideas proposed within this. Originally, when Israel was established, there was basically a 50-50 split in territory and included a provision that made Jerusalem an international entity, that it was not owned by Israel or Palestine. And I think that while I can understand why some people were against that, and I can understand why some people were for it, as we continue to put these ideas out, we continue to foster a dialogue and we continue to move forward and become more progressive as we reform continuously. These ideas will start to take root and they'll start to become viable.
Do you agree?
I think, I think that we need to be asked what our responsibility is and to be given responsibility as young people, that our voice does matter and that we are educated enough. We've, being at a college university and attempting to understand these ideas, that gives us responsibility, and claiming an identity gives us responsibility and gives us a chance to offer feasible solutions, not just theological or philosophical solutions. So I think I would just love to hear from leadership in my faith is what is our responsibility for the others, and also what is our responsibility within our own faith. I was very intrigued by the idea of the bad wolf and the good wolf. What is our responsibility to the bad wolf in our own community? What is our role in making sure that's not the loudest voice, and things like that. So I would love to hear that responsibility be shared equally. I think.
Some very thoughtful young people here up on the
Very
stage
impressive.
today. What are your reactions to what they just said? Reverend.
Well, I appreciate very much what you all have said because you don't bring a jaded perspective. You bring the notion that things don't have to be intractable. You bring the kind of earnestness and idealism that is appropriate, and I think that is very, very helpful because there cannot be the ongoing movement toward the goals of peace if no one believes it's possible, and that you believe that there is good work that can be done, and that you have contributions to make to that, I think is a very encouraging word. I'm reminded of Ibu Patel's idea, the Interfaith Youth Corps. He says it's so important that we not just learn about the other or be told by the other, but that we actually do the interreligious work together. And in service, projects that matter, that's where real transformation occurs. And I see your generation modeling that in a very constructive way.
Rabbi. Oh, he's got the rabbi.
I have.
Yeah.
Rabbi has a special treatment.
These are kind of freaking me out. I don't know
Yeah,
about you.
it's like
but-
it's a whole
yeah.
weird thing.
Yeah, it's a whole new
I
thing.
know. First of all, good things are happening here in Jacksonville. These are good things. And it looks like there's a lot of places in America who can learn from what's going on here. You're already thinking about how to be part of the solution. You're not analyzing the problem. And that's 3 steps ahead of the rest of the country. So number one, and the quality is very, very impressive. I can't respond to you because your challenge to me was listen. So I have to listen. And I haven't listened to you, but I spend much of my life listening, and I think you're right. I think I know that particularly in the Jewish community, we have an answer to the question you haven't yet asked. Don't nod so much, but you know what I mean. Listen, I worked my whole life to learn the answer, and now someone wants to tell me I don't want your answer. It's a very frustrating thing. That's not what the way life should be. But I think as one of the things that's happening in the United States, and it's one of the most beautiful things that's happening in the United States, is that you could be Jewish, Christian, Muslim, secular atheist, humanist, etc. There is a merging of our communities in ways which we didn't have in my generation. Our communities are beginning to live with each other in very, very beautiful ways. It's not just being invited to someone's Shabbos meal. 70% of the Jewish community are marrying people of other faith communities. It's the first generation where non-Jews are willing to marry Jews. Because prior to our generation, you had to be insane to marry a Jew. No, like, well, I want to check out a pogrom. Like, what was it that you would be inclined to do? Like, you know, but like I could speak as a Jew, the embrace of America, of Jews, and the profound transformation in Christianity, and its deep, deep rejection of anti-Semitism, to the extent that anti-Semitism has nothing to do with the Jewish-Christian conversation anymore. It's just not our...
In one generation.
In one generation, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
Now our job, both as Christians and as Jews, is to stop the anti-Semitism against Islam. And by the way, Islamophobia is a very bad term for that anti-Semitism. It's just a bad term. I don't know. I'm calling it anti-Semitism. I need another term. But Islamophobia allows the other side to say, I'm not a phobia, and they give you it's just this theological, moral, racial vilification of another. I've experienced it, and together, in one generation, we now have one generation to change it with them. But now this conversation is a community of people who are living together, merging with each other. That's the most beautiful thing of America. And if they would duplicate us, that would be a tragedy. It will be fascinating to see where a Muslim young woman gets up and says, I want to hear your song as you prayed for. And that's going to be a new uncharted territory where we have to make sure that our educational goal is not to save them from that and make us like us, but to provide different spiritual inspiration to be with you in the midst of the new journey that you're embarking on.
I want to be the grumpy non-millennial uncle and be a little bit not tough, but I want to push you guys back. In your responses to what do you expect from your previous generations, I think you guys were too soft. You were too gentle, and you keep the bar so low. My request and begging to you would be harsher. Be more critical. And keep the bar of your expectation from the previous generation much higher than these gentle nudges and pushes. Because your ability to do better than us relies on your ability to see in what areas we have succeeded in defeating anti-Semitism, defeating racism. It didn't defeat it and kill, but we came a long way. The previous generation is leaving you a recovering racist, recovering anti-Semitic world. You have to appreciate, understand their success, but also in many ways they are leaving you a much more broken, messed up world. That your ability to do a better job is rely on what areas the previous generations has failed so deeply. So what are you going to do better to be able to sing some new songs that those mistakes will not be repeated? I love the Turkish redneck joke. There's a Turkish redneck joke. A Turkish redneck sees a huge slippery banana peel on his walkway. Huge, big banana peel, slippery. You know what he says? Shoot, I'm going to fall again. Because he's done it many times. He saw the banana peel, he stepped on it and fell many times. So if you are not going to fall again, as we did in those areas, you have to be tougher with us. You have to be a little bit more critical with us. You have to keep your expectations much, much higher than just a few gentle requests here and there. Because the issues are so critical.
Do you agree with that? Anybody? Don't be shy.
They're shy.
Sure.
I mean, I absolutely agree with that. I think I answered the initial question the way that I did because I feel, I mean, I grew up in a very involved Jewish community, a parent who's a Jewish professional. You know, we're having conversations about the conflict my whole life, and yet I found myself in far too many situations where I felt silenced in my own community about how I feel, or assumed that because I'm young, I don't have a complex understanding or a personal understanding of what I think solutions are. You know, I'm trying to make it my mission to be more vocal and to be critical, but I think it takes your whole community to do that. You know, me as one person, I don't always feel like I have that authority, and so to be invited also to what I think helps young people, because I can speak for myself that I'm not always confident enough to think I'm sitting in a room of really important people who've studied this and do this work. So what is the value of my voice? And so to be invited into that conversation, I think, goes a really long way.
Or to reframe the conversation altogether. It may be that the tropes that my generation has used are not sufficient at all. What Daniil said a moment ago about this is an inflection time when we are living more closely together than we ever have as religious communities, with deeper appreciation and a deeper sense that of cultivating respect for the lived religion of others. I think there's real promise in that. And I think your generation is ahead of where it has moved forward in a quantum way from where my generation was. And I'm very hopeful about that.
Almost out of time. Anybody have any closing thoughts? No? Okay. Well, how about a big round of applause for this wonderful group? Thank you so much. And now Tara Trueblood is going to make an announcement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How's this? All right. We're going to transition in a moment to do something fun, but before you move, I want to just bring your attention to something in your chair. It's a handout about a scholarship. If you've heard something today that has moved you, if you're hopeful about the emerging generation, if you're hopeful about the program that we have here at UNF to empower young adults, millennials from different worldviews to work together for the common good, help us support this scholarship called the Noor Inayat Khan Scholarship. There's a little story about her on the handout and tells about her interfaith service during World War II. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rachel McNeil, who's going to lead us in an engagement of one another across all kinds of difference, including this huge gap we seem to be stumbling across, which is a generational gap.
All right. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi. All right, I'm really excited to get to be the one to be your guide through the next interactive portion of our program, which is, I think, the first time anything like this has been done at a Distinguished Voices lecture series. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. So this is Fulterius. He is one of our graduate student assistants. And before we get into the actual activity, we want to go over with you something we call guidelines for civil discourse, because this activity is going to involve engagement. It's going to involve conversation, and you're going to be talking intergenerationally. You're going to be talking in an interfaith context, so you're going to be talking to people of different faith backgrounds or secular identities. And so we just like to have a few ground rules to make that a little bit more I don't want to say comfortable, because I'm going to urge you to step outside of your comfort zone, but I want them to help you feel a little bit more safe. So Brian, if we can get the next slide. This is going to be our guidelines for civil discourse, and Fulterius is going to help me go through these. So I'm going to turn it over to him to go through the first few.
Okay, so the first guideline is to use I statements, and this guideline is pretty much, the purpose of this guideline is to avoid generalizing populations. For example, using I statements, I as a black man will speak from being a black man from my experience, and not to generalize the entire population of black men. It's okay to disagree. We do encourage everyone to voice what you have to say, but it's also important to be open-minded and to just hear others out. But you can, like I said, disagree. One person speaks at a time. It is also important to let others fully say what they have to say, and to respond when it's appropriate, and to be respectful. This encourages room for dialogue, so everyone could voice what they have to say.
Okay, the next one is listen more, speak in turn, I think. Either way, listen more, speak in turn. So take turns speaking. This is a conversation, not a monologue. So ask yourself, have I been talking too much? The answer might be yes, in which case turn it over to the next person. The next is suspend judgment. We all have stereotypes that we hold about other people, about other groups. We just ask that you try to be aware of those and suspend them, and try to learn something new about someone or a group that you might not have known before. We're here to learn each other's stories. The other is keep confidentiality. So while you're having a conversation, you might hear a personal story, and that person has trusted you with that story. So keep that story to yourself. Take the knowledge that you've gained from that and pass it around freely, but just keep people's personal stories safe. The next is practice forgiveness. So we're all learning, and we all might make mistakes in the learning process. So let's just forgive one another. If you are hurt or offended by something that is said, bring it up kindly, and then offer forgiveness. And then no debating. So there's a time and a place for debates. We are in a very big season of debate right now with the primaries going on. So let's just take a break from that for a little bit. No debating today. We're here just to have a conversation. And our last guideline is to please no proselytizing. Proselytizing, or the attempt to convert another person, very important to a lot of people. I identify as an evangelical Christian, so this is a big part of my faith identity. But these interfaith spaces are not a time to engage in proselytism or evangelism. So if you can agree, please raise your hand and say, I agree. All right, you are bound. All right, so we are going to go into this program. This program is called Talk Better Together. Brian, next slide. This program is called Talk Better Together. It was developed by the Interfaith Youth Corps, which is Ibu Patel, as Reverend Mully Marshall brought up Ibu Patel earlier. This is his organization. They're based out of Chicago. They're an interfaith organization, gives resources to college campuses to engage students in interfaith learning and engagement. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to take you one step at a time so that we can make it as simple as possible. So your first step is to stand up. Also, if you have some mobile impairments, that's fine. You may stay seated. All right, now that you are standing, let's see, everybody stand up. Now that you are standing, find a partner, and let me encourage you to find someone that you do not know, that you've never met, that looks different from you, that's maybe a different age than you. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do this. Find a partner. We would love